I will do my best. If you do have questions, so we're kind of going to get going. We've got quite a few people on, and time is ticking. So if you do have questions, I am going to do my best to be looking at chat. So please pop them in there. You know, anything you want to know, I'll try and get round to and try and factor that in as I go through. So if I'm saying some stuff that you want some clarification on, or for heaven forbid you disagree with, which you are allowed to do, I may not answer you, but you are allowed to disagree. Please do pop it in the chat, and we'll try and get to them. So why are you here today? Why am I here today? Very good question. I'm really going to focus today about some of the challenges companies have in the immersive tech space of actually getting customers to understand what they do or what they offer. You know, I'm constantly surprised at, you know, how difficult it can be for companies to really get that across to their customers. But then I also, when I say I'm constantly surprised, you know, my role is to bridge that gap between the sort of product and the market. So therefore I always sort of see how would I communicate that. A lot of companies are more focused on their product, understandably, because if you don't have a good product, what's the point of having great marketing? You've got to have the right product. So often the sense is focus on the product, then move towards, you know, how you communicate to the market. And that in of itself is quite challenging, because by the time you get to that point, you know, you're a little bit far down the track, and that can cause you a few problems. And Russ, you're asking what I mean by customers. Yeah, I mean, it could be individuals or businesses. I mean, this tends to focus a bit more on B2B. But it is absolutely equally relevant for, you know, B2C audience as well, because a customer can be anyone who you are looking to get to either buy your product or service. Okay, so let's just give you a very quick little bit of background of XRTech Marketing, which is the consultancy I have founded about 8 months ago. It's a consultancy purely focused on the immersive tech sector, which makes us a pretty unique proposition. And it's really there to help companies to bridge that gap that I was just talking to you about. So how do they talk to the market? How do they position themselves? How do they be seen as thought leaders? How do they generate leads? All those things that companies, as they're starting to, you know, move through those sort of startup through to scale up stages, really need to accelerate in that sort of marketing discipline. And we've worked with a number of companies currently in the market in that sort of scale up type phase. And also in my previous roles, I've worked with some pretty big global brands, helping them develop immersive tech solutions as well. So a lot of experience. We can do all sorts of different things. What we do pride ourselves on is being very open and honest. And I think that's really important. That's kind of a theme that I hope will come through this talk is, you know, it's not about, you know, trying to bamboozle people. It's basically trying to get people to really understand what the potential is, the capabilities are, but not overhyping the technology, because that is something that I do find a little frustrating at times, whereby there's a little bit of kind of making out the immersive tech is going to solve all the problems in the world and some. And that really doesn't do anyone any favors whatsoever. So, you know, keeping it absolutely honest, straightforward, because the technology is incredible. The technology can do some incredible things, but it doesn't do everything. You know, it may sound obvious, but it doesn't do everything. So before we start looking at, you know, how companies communicate to their customers and some of the challenges that they come across, I just wanted to have a little sort of dip into an interesting situation I came across a couple of weeks ago or so. So I create every so often, you know, I'll create a video, put it on LinkedIn, talking about something in the immersive tech field, and just sort of, you know, throw it out there and see what response I get. Now, I got a really interesting response on this. I was kind of talking about terminology, and people use a lot of terminology not correctly. They kind of make terminology, I think, when sometimes you don't need terminology, you know, unnecessary acronyms. And so I just put up a post. It was only a minute, and part of that was to talk about, you know, is 360 video, if viewed in a headset, is that VR. And I just kind of threw it in there quite flippantly. But if you look on either side of that sort of picture of the post there is, you know, the amount of comments that came through and, you know, people feeling really, really passionate about it and getting quite worked up, if I'm honest. You know, a few people had to sort of, you know, needed to go walk away from the computer for a little bit, I think, and get a little bit, you know, a bit more perspective. My point was less about, and Bertie saying, yes, you know, 360 video in a VR headset is VR. There'll be someone else who says no with an exclamation mark as well. The point I was trying to make actually is it doesn't really matter. My point was, you've got to think how customers perceive it. So if you go into a customer and have a solution that uses 360 video, and it might be ones that put hotspots in there and you can look around a factory and do some sort of training or some sort of onboarding, you know, a customer is going to think, well, I'm looking at it this is definitely a VR headset because I've been told it is, and I'm looking at it in a VR headset, but I'm being told that it's not VR, it's actually 360-degree video. Now, my point to that is, in that situation, it does not matter. The customer is thinking, I'm having a virtual experience, it's really helpful, I can orientate around the factory, I can interact with, to a degree, it's not sixed off, obviously, because it's video. But, you know, does it really matter from a customer perspective, whether we call it 360 or whether we call it VR, or debate that? And I would say no. And if anyone has a strong feeling other than Bertie thinking that it definitely is VR, please pop it in the chat, and I will do my best to chat to it. So the point there being is, don't get hung up on the technology. Don't get hung up on the words. Don't get hung up on how we describe it. Think about this from an end user perspective. That is the most important thing to think about. And just a quick question from Yakim. Are you helping companies marketing their AR XR products or companies brands to utilize AR XR in marketing and processes? Very good question. It's actually both. So I will help companies who are looking to bring a product to market. I also help end users identify the right products to use. So it's a bit of both. Nicole, what's important is the value the experience creates. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that pretty much, I should have that on a slide really, because that's pretty much exactly what I feel. Because where you end up is this, right? As a customer, they're just like, you know, who cares? You know, multi-user sixed off HMD VR scenario. I've deliberately made that quite ridiculous and preposterous, but you know, that's where they're at. They don't care. They're just trying to work out what is it going to do for their business? How's it going to improve, you know, how they do their job, how their employees do their job, what is it they're looking to achieve? And they're not really bothered so much about what it's called, you know, they're interested in those results. So, and this GIF is absolutely my favorite GIF, and it does tend to find its way into most of my presentations. So apologies if you've seen it before, but I just like looking at it. The point being kind of, you know, it's not about the technology, right? It's what can be done with that technology. It's as simple as that. You know, if it's technology for technology's sake, you're going nowhere. If that technology improves lives, if that technology, you know, makes a difference, if it, you know, wherever it is, and that might be in a consumer world, it might be in a B2B world, it might be in the medical sphere where, you know, one of my favorite use cases ever is where they use VR for pain relief with children having their burn stress. And it's, you know, as effective as opioids, if not better. You know, whatever it's doing, it's about what it enables. It's not about the tech, because it is cool tech, let's face it, really cool tech. But it's not about that. It's about what comes out of it. And I see, Nicole, you got 1,000 songs in your pocket, which AKA for the iPod, absolutely. You know, it's not a storage device. It's, you know, every song you've ever wanted in your pocket. So I think that's hugely relevant. So think about, step away from the technology, think about what it's going to do. 40 immersive XP. Thanks, Yakim. That's another definitely unnecessary term we can add into the mix. What I love on this, if you can just see at the bottom of the GIF. So this is something I've just grabbed off Giphy. I love how in little type, do not attempt. I just love that. It's like, yeah, everyone. So, you know, obviously I should issue that warning as well. Anyone seeing this, I don't suggest you go home and do this. although it does look like a lot of fun, to be fair. Right, so let's come back to the crux of it, which is, how companies are communicating to the market about what they are offering. So this is a really interesting stat that I've come across. There's a couple here actually from, this is B2B. And I thought it was really interesting because basically what it's saying is, and this one's less surprising than the next one, but it's basically saying, look, we don't feel that we're hugely differentiated from our competitors, and that they have very similar capabilities. Not a huge surprise there, but if you look at 88%, that's a pretty big amount. What I really like there is the what would that be? Maybe 2%. The 2% who are not at all. There is nothing in the market like this. Those are the guys I'm interested in, right? There is absolutely nothing the same as ours. Which those are the guys who are really kind of committed and think they've got something that has never been done before, and they may well be right. Equally, they may not be because they haven't done their due diligence in the market, but we'll see. So the next stat is what I find really interesting. Slightly bizarre that it's 88% again, which makes me question it a little bit, but even if it's just indicative, that's important. What this is really interesting is basically saying that, whether it's 88%, 70%, 60%, whatever, but the vast majority of sellers out in the market aren't confident that buyers understand what makes their solution unique or different. Now that's really high. That's a lot of companies out there who aren't convinced that the market gets what they're talking about, which I find worrying. My role is to help the market understand, is to bridge that product through to the market gap. And if whatever it is, 2/3, 4/5, or whatever of companies don't think they're doing a good enough job there, that is just like a huge gap, a huge opportunity as well for those who can get it right. So that's really that absolutely shocked me. If I'm really honest, I'm just like, wow, there's a lot of companies out there that need help, because what's the point of spending all this time creating incredible products if at the end of the day the market doesn't understand what they are? So all that hard work developing a product, which is so important, if you aren't able then to communicate that to the market as to why they should buy it, all that work is kind of going to waste. And that definitely I find upsetting, not so much as I'm sure the product owners themselves. So, this is really about a value proposition, is how a company explains to the market what they have. And what you don't want to be is this poor chap. I've no idea how I came across this image, but I do love it. What is he doing? His shirt's untucked and flying up, and he stood on a big sand dune. Very bizarre, but it kind of, works as a good analogy to going, a lot of companies haven't really got a clue what they're doing. And, this poor chap is a very good example of that. And if you haven't really got any clue about what your value proposition is, I very much doubt you really know who your customers should be. So, I think there are people out there who are just kind of, throwing stuff at a dartboard and seeing what sticks. And that really is no way to, unfortunately, run a business, or it is, but not very well, and you won't be around for long. So what is a value proposition? Because there's lots of things: value proposition, positioning, messaging. What does all this mean? Why does it matter? Well, the definition, I mean, there are different definitions, but this one is a pretty good catch-all for that. But it's a value proposition is a clear statement about the outcomes. And for outcomes, you can talk, benefits, outcomes, kind of interchangeable. The outcomes that an individual or an organization can realize from using your product, service, or solution, right? So that is how you just encapsulate, this is why you should use us. This is why. This is the benefits that's going to happen to you if you use this product. So you kind of think that's pretty straightforward, right? But in order to do that, you need to know a number of things. You need to be able to understand, okay, what is going to resonate with the market? What is the market looking for? How do I wrap this up in a way that the market understands it? And am I sure what I'm trying to do is resonating with the market, which is the big trick in there, is to be picking the right proposition that's going to resonate with that market. So one of the important things is you need to understand what is important to your customers, right? So a really good way of looking at this, which is something I've come across previously, is, you know, when they're looking to solve the challenge they've got, what would they type into Google? You know, what is the thing? What is the how to? How to, you know, in this case, we've got, you know, reduce the risk in the workplace. You know, it might be, you know, how to retain employees for longer. It might be, you know, how to reduce travel for my company, whatever it is. But as, you know, companies need to be understanding what that how-to question is that relates to their product. So if they've got that and they understand where the customer is starting their journey, then they're going to be in a better position to align their product with that need. So it's a really good way and a useful way, I think, for companies to go about this and go, well, okay, what is that first thing they might type into Google? Sure, not everyone goes to Google initially, but I guarantee you at some point in the journey, they will go to Google and they will have a look at something, and they'll come across a paid search result, or they'll come across a natural search result. You know, it may not be it won't be the only thing that makes their decision, but it's a really important part of it. So if you kind of think, you know, what is that how-to question? I think that that puts you really quickly in the mindset of the customer. And then you've got to think, what's the pain point that's being solved here, right? You know, a company that has an immersive tech product, what are they solving for their customers? So, you know, is it just like more of a short-term solution? It's just a sticky plaster. You know, it's short-term, but it's not really going to, you know, do anything of great note, and it's going to be something that's gone very quickly. Or is it something that's more of like it's a painkiller? So it's more of a midterm thing. You know, it's very effective in that midterm and it does well. But once again, you're just masking. Or ultimately, is it a cure? So is that problem, whatever it is, employee retention, travel costs, risk reduction, you know, does that product solve that for customers? And if it does solve it for the customers, is that customer base big enough to basically sustain, you know, the business model for it? So I think it's useful to think around. I actually picked this up at a conference from a venture capitalist who was talking about, you know, the fact that, you know, if you're just the plaster, you're going to get one of the big companies come in and squash you. You know, you've got to either be sort of, you know, a fairly advanced painkiller, or you've got to be the cure. Otherwise, you just got like a short window to make your money, and then you're going to be crushed by one of the big guys. So what you want to do basically is you want to try and align. And by the way, there's some great comments coming in here, and I'm really, it's just, you know, such good comments, but I just can't really keep up. So what I might do is after this slide, just have a quick scroll through the comments and see if we can come back to some of them. But in the meantime, you know, where you want to position yourself as a company is, okay, you know, these are the things your product lets people do, and these are the things customers want to do now. And so there's a certain immediacy here, because it's important to be talking in a way to the market with what is possible now, not what will be possible in 3 or 4 releases time. So you need to kind of align that, and you want to get customers, and this is a challenge within immersive tech, right? You want to get your customers to be able to experience or interact as quickly as you can. Now, the challenge in immersive technology is, you know, quite often it is something that has to be tried, particularly for VR. You know, the conversations you have with someone who hasn't tried VR compared to someone who has tried VR is, you know, as we'll all know, it is night and day. And so that presents a bit of a challenge. You know, there's more people now sending out headsets, you know, very effectively to the market and be able to get people to try it. But you want to get people to understand what they can do with the product in the here and now, and get them to experience it. And that's, you know, just a key thing. Once again, certainly during lockdown, that's been a massive challenge for immersive tech companies. Coming out of lockdown, you know, I think there will be a greater appetite from the customer base to try new technology, which is great, and they will have greater opportunity to try it. So I think, you know, that should even itself out over the coming sort of 6-8 months. Okay, before I look at discontinuous innovation, let's just have a quick, I'll try and scroll back, but gosh, there's a lot. There's a lot of things. So there's something, where was that one from Faddy? Talking about 360 videos, I think the better question to ask 360 videos is it immersive or just interactive? All depends how it's created and delivered. Quite right, Fadi. It can be both, of course. I mean, you know, the interaction is perhaps a little bit less, maybe hotspot type scenario, but yes, absolutely. You know, and, you know, if it does a job, does a customer care whether it's immersive or just interactive? Probably not. You know, they're very happy to use it just so that it'll fix the problem they're looking to address. Okay, let's crack on. Look, keep the comments coming, even if it's just, you know, for people who are watching this to be able to interact and chat. So one of the reasons immersive technology is really challenging to sometimes position with customers is this concept of discontinuous innovation, which is a term coined by Geoffrey Moore in his book Crossing the Chasm, which is quite an old book now, but it's actually been updated a few times. And Rory, I use it almost every day. Good stuff, Rory. It's a brilliant book and hugely applicable, I think, to both VR and AR. And so within that book, he talks about this concept of discontinuous innovation, which I think absolutely applies to immersive technology. So if you take glasses, right? So, you know, glasses been, you know, pretty much as they've been for, you know, centuries. And you'd have, you know, just a standard pair of glasses. Now, as an innovation, you might then have better glasses. These ones are by Porsche, I think. So, you know, better glasses, better lenses. Yeah, that's evolution. That makes perfect sense. Yeah, I get that. Then you take a bit more of a jump and you move to contact lenses. Well, okay, people can still get their head around that. You know, it's instead of the lenses in a frame, they're actually on your eye. A little bit freaky, but oh, okay, I get it. It's like, you know, it's like frameless glasses. You're putting them on there, and obviously all the comfort that brings. So, you know, that's all sort of understandable. That's all good. That's sort of, you know, how people would expect things to evolve. But then, oh my goodness, laser eye surgery. Now that, you know, that is somewhat mind-blowing, probably pretty scary, but it's just a leap, right? You've gone from, okay, yeah, I get it, there are lenses and stuff, to, okay, we're going to cut little slits into the lenses in your eyes, and that's going to cure your vision problem. Wow. Absolutely, you know, terrifying for some, awe-inspiring for others, but that is what you would consider as discontinuous innovation. So if you think about, you know, immersive tech, VR, AR, any of the other acronyms, that is discontinuous innovation. So what that means is customers don't have a reference point for it. Okay, so when you're talking to end users, they have a real challenge in that they're not upgrading, they're not replacing. You know, there is no kind of reference point to say, oh yeah, we need a new one of those, or we need a better one of those. You know, it's really challenging because they often don't even know where it sits in the organization, who owns it. That's a massive debate that a number of end users I've helped try and address. They don't even know who should own it in the organization because it is so new. So that is a big challenge for companies to therefore position the product and how it works, which is why it needs to be far more benefit led. Okay, you have to be focusing on the benefit. There's the book. If anyone is interested, you can get it, you know, anywhere. But it's worth a read. Just that graph on the front of the crossing the gap between the early innovators and the early majority is a really interesting concept. So that discontinuous innovation plays out in the fact that you have to think about framing this in benefits. You have to be able to talk to customers, end users, whoever, and say, okay, it's not just about features, it's about what those features can do. And this is a real example that I had with a company whereby they were very focused on multi-user capability and how important that was. And for them, that was incredible. This was probably a couple of years ago where sort of multi-user VR was really, you know, pretty much cutting edge. Now it's far more accepted, but, you know, multi-user is something that they would talk about a lot in their literature, talk about a lot in their demos. and were really proud of the fact that they had created this multi-user VR environment. Now the challenge was the customers would go away from that absolutely wowed by it, but they wouldn't understand how it would relate to their business. So if you then reframe that as a benefit and say, okay, we'll tell you what, and often they wouldn't need multiple people in there. It might be just a singular experience. But if you framed it in a way, so, well, hang on a sec, if you think you can have 2 people in that space, in a VR space in this case, and one of those could be a trainer. And that trainer, therefore, doesn't have to go and fly, halfway across the world and waste a week training up those people. He can actually go and, do multiple sessions without even leaving his office. So if you flip it from here's a feature to this is what the feature does, then you come back under and kind of relate that back. And of course, that's enabled by multi-user capability. So I think that's the important thing. Time is zipping by, as it always does. So let's come back. That's the definition, right? A value proposition is a clear statement about outcomes that an individual organization can realize from using your product, service, or solution. So let's have a few examples out in the market. Okay, so I've got some in the immersive tech space, some in the broader kind of space because they've done them really well. And we just have a quick look. So first up, you've got good old Xero. Now Xero, as a value proposition, it's that their target is smaller businesses. And they're basically saying, look, it's easy and it saves you time. That is the core message for them to say ease of use and time, because time is precious. And they've gone for that really, really effectively there. And I think that's superb. Shazam identifies songs playing around you. That's what they do. It's very literal. And you know exactly where you stand with this. If you want to be able to listen to identify a song that you've heard, it's sitting in the bar, sitting in a restaurant, use Shazam. So once again, very, very, very simple, very, very accurate and sort of direct. Then you look at spatial. So spatial, virtual spaces that bring us together. So I think that's an interesting one there, in that, it's about that sort of bringing people together. And obviously that's been hugely important throughout the whole sort of global lockdown. Kind of interesting they don't talk about sort of, business or, what you can do. So they're kind of going quite broad there and saying, just come together in spatial, do whatever you're going to be doing, whether it's collaborating, potentially even hanging out. So they've gone for the slightly more, broader value proposition there. And then we've got good old Striver, the big gorilla in the VR training room. And they talk about elevate workforce performance with VR training. So once again, very functional, but it's talking about, get the maximum from your workforce, get the maximum performance using VR for training. And then Oculus for Business, love them or hate them. They've kind of gone down a slightly more, a slightly fluffier route, I'd say, which is transform work with virtual reality. That's quite broad, I would argue, as a value proposition. It's perhaps not really giving enough for people to fully get into it, but equally, they have a number of use cases, and as long as they can sell the hardware, they're not really, they don't have great deal of concern as to how it's being used. So therefore, they've kept that quite broad. And then I didn't really want to pick on any company, so I was trying to keep it all positive, but we do need to see an example of one that isn't so good. So I hope there's no one on from Virtuosi, and please don't take this personally. And I'd be very happy to help you refine this if that would be of help. But Virtuosi, experience learning, experience results. And I've made sure this isn't just a one-off on their website. There's someone from Virtuosi. Oh, joking. That's good. Thanks, Oscar. That is not a very good value proposition. Like that is where you get a customer going, I don't get it. Just, what does that mean? So, that is where it does, the wheels fall off the marketing machine a bit, and you just leave people scratching their heads and not really understanding where they should be. And these guys, right, you have to look them up because they came out with the funniest photo shoot I've ever seen. And I have to give them respect for it because it really, I saw this, I think I came across this like 2 or 3 years ago when they launched. They're a small VR offering within a bigger learning organization. And I think they are the best pictures I've ever seen. Just Google it. They've got kind of like, it looks like a rock band who've fallen into some HTC headsets and aren't very happy about it. And I just love it. They're brilliant. There are better ones than this, actually. And fair play to them for going with this, because I think it's the lady in the red dress, as someone's mentioned, Oscar's mentioned, without a headset. I mean, everyone looks annoyed. So I'm sure that was the brief, as opposed to them just being really annoyed. And of course, the future can't be here, because then it's not the future. So that as a tagline is upsets me a little bit. They're called virtuosi. But listen, hey, they're there, I'm sure, doing the best they can. But in this case, there's probably a bit of room for improvement. Okay, so to summarize, this is all about, and this is really simple, too simplistic perhaps, but it's about getting the right message, the value proposition, delivering it to the right audience, delivering it at the right time. But of course, also what isn't on here is the right channel. You've got to get all those things together. And I think the important thing here is you've got to have like constant touch points. It's not about happening to hit someone up with an email just when they're thinking of buying an immersive tech solution, because that's going to be very unlikely. It's going to be them signing up to a newsletter, and then them seeing a webinar, and them seeing some paid media, and then them seeing an interesting LinkedIn post, all from the same company. And then perhaps, a few months down the line, they're like, I remember that company. I'm now going to, look at them because I'm seriously considering implementing an immersive technology solution. So to leave you is with this. If your potential customers are having to work, I wouldn't, in fact, too hard is wrong. If they're having to work to understand your value proposition, they're going to be gone. Quite simply, you're just going to lose them. If you're going to make them have to really think about, how would that benefit me? How would that fit? Then you've kind of missed the task in hand from a marketing perspective of really pushing forward as to why people are going to use your product. And so that, you have to make it easy. You have to really distill it down. You have to do everything you can, because you don't want to end up like this poor chap in the desert, wandering around with his shirt untucked, slight pot belly, with a headset on, wondering, A, where's his value proposition, and B, where are the customers? So that's it. That's a whistle-stop tour. I hope everyone has found that useful and interesting. You are welcome to stay on the chat, because they don't kick us out of the room, but obviously there are other sessions going on. But I hope you found it useful. Nicole, you said, wonder if the question is the other way around, how to get the product to understand the customer. Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a pretty sophisticated product that's going to start doing its own market research, but I'm just joking. Let me just see. Lots of comments about the red dress, lady in the red dress. Yes. A lot of money in that picture. Yep, they got a lot of Vive Pros in there, Russ. So it's quite fun. Russ, you'll say, I feel like the Oculus Facebook strategy is to simply inundate the market with the headsets using Facebook. Yeah, I mean, they're definitely just grabbing market share, which they can. So, that makes sense. Bertie making the RR joke. You got VR, MR, AR, and RR, which of course is real reality. Thank you, Bertie. Very good. Porsche equals better. That looks like you're slightly biased there, Joe, but fair enough. Cool. Excellent. Well, thank you all. Anything else? Yeah, Diane, you're facing problems with educators who think the tech is fleeting. Getting to view these platforms as stable is a challenge. Yeah, that's a really good point. All I can say is over time, with more use cases coming out, more people using the technology, more data available, those arguments will become easier to bat off. But yes, Diane, it's, especially if you are in the education sector, which I'm assuming is what you mean, that's always a challenge. Unfortunately, there are some innovators in there, but there's a lot of people who are waiting to see what comes out. Nicole, what if you have a product It's hard to experience under lockdown and describe. We are working with haptics company. Yeah, it's really hard, Nicole. If you can't get people to experience it, it's a massive challenge in the immersive tech space. Some companies got over it by just shipping out headsets, preloaded with content, or stuff that they can use on Oculus for Business. But yeah, it's a challenge. All I would say is, on the plus point, a lot of people have been exposed to the technology during lockdown who wouldn't have been open to it pre-lockdown. I was talking to someone at PwC a while ago, and their role is to sort of evangelize VR within the organization. And he mentioned that he'd been able to access senior partners far more easily as a result of lockdown than he ever would have been previously. So, I think that will be the longer term benefit, but I think in the short term, you're still going to have challenges. Yeah, the classic one, Diane. People worried that they think something better is going to come along. Yeah, that's a challenge, but people need to understand they can do a lot now and not wait for something they think, an all singing, all dancing, headset that's going to do everything. Otherwise, you'll be waiting forever. Oscar, you found it hilarious. I hope that was in a good way. That's very good. You can always, GIFs are always the way forward. Bertie, of course it was insightful. I would expect, you'd expect that, but all good. Well, listen, thank you all very much. I'm going to let you crack on and head off into the other sessions. If you want to get hold of me, my details are there. Please feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. I occasionally say some vaguely interesting things mixed in with some not so interesting. Emails there as well, and the company website. So yeah, if you want to get in touch, please do. I'm always happy to chat, whether there's a specific business opportunity or just to chat, because it's a great sector that we are all interested in. All right. Thank you all very much, and enjoy the rest of the summit.